Hi, this is MyCom, the Church Communications and Marketing Podcast. We're building your digital ministry toolkit and helping to bring your congregation into the digital age. My name is Ryan Dunn. I'm a fellow traveler on the journey to better church connections. We're going to talk with Reverend Brandon Robbins, a passionate parish pastor turned successful YouTube content creator from Virginia Beach. Years ago, Brandon started a YouTube channel that went nowhere. Might be a little familiar to a lot of us. Just as Brandon was about to give up, a couple videos he produced in response to a popular TV series unexpected catapulted his channel, putting his messages before thousands and eventually millions of viewers. Not bad reach, right? So Brandon and I explore what he's learned building his channel, how he balances a full-time pastoral role and digital content creation, and how he generates faith-based video content that goes beyond the words of scripture to enrich spiritual understanding. Whether you're a pastor who might be curious about digital ministry or a content creator looking for inspiration, this episode has some great insights on utilizing YouTube for a greater purpose. We can thank Discipleship Ministries for helping to make this valuable conversation possible. Deepen your congregation's connection to the sacraments with the new Belong series from Discipleship Ministries. This dynamic resource makes baptism, communion, and membership vows more engaging than ever. Get started at uncdiscipleship.org. Speaking of engagement, check out Brandon's YouTube channel, which is simply called Brandon Robbins Ministry. Reverend Brandon joins us from Virginia Beach, Virginia. How goes it with your soul, Brandon?
That's great. Just really, really wonderful weather we've been having. So it's always, something that brightens up the soul and just a really good season. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be joining you today.
Cool. Well, I'm curious as to how you found yourself in the place of ministry that you're at. So what came first, Brandon, the content creator, or Brandon, the, I don't want to say pastoral pastor, but, the parish pastor?
Definitely the parish pastor.
Okay.
So, I've been in ministry since 2008 and have had the opportunity to serve a variety of different churches. I started out as an associate and then went and was the solo pastor at a small rural church, and then planted a church back in 2014 on a college campus. And then in 2018 moved here to where we're a mid-sized church here in Virginia Beach. So that's really been my identity since I got out of seminary, is serving in the local church. And it's been my passion. It's actually why I got on YouTube in the first place to an extent. All of that was really tied to the local church.
Well, tell me about that. What was it that drew you into YouTube?
Well, so funny enough, the way it really started was in 2019. I'd been doing newsletters for my church, and I just felt like, let's just do something different. So instead of typing out a newsletter, maybe I'll just create a quick little video, put it on YouTube, they can watch it, and just be a different way to engage. And quickly that evolved into just doing different kinds of videos and playing around and trying to be consistent. And then my original goal for YouTube was to take a lot of the things I was learning about church growth and church systems and how to have a healthy, growing church, and to be able to share that with others. I just think one of my passions. If I learn something, I want to pass that on to other people. And I tried to do that for probably about 2 years, and it floundered. Getting onto YouTube, really kind of breaking in is a tough thing. And for about 2 years, I was happy if I got 100 views. And half the time I bet that was just my mom just hitting repeat, just trying to get the view count up and get the algorithm going. But it just really didn't go anywhere. I'd have like a video or two that take off, and I never really knew why. And after about 2 years of doing that, and I covered all kinds of things, not even just church growth kind of stuff, I was about ready to kind of hang it up and just say, you know what, this was good. I did it for 2 years. And I remember the day. So I said, Lord, it's a busy season. It was January of 2021. I'd been through COVID and all the challenges of that. I was tired. And so I was like, Lord, I'm going to give this up. I'm going to give it to you. And if you ever want it to grow and want to call me back to it, that's awesome. I'll come back. But until then, I'm going to let it go. And crazy enough, about a week or two before I said that, I had done a video on episode 1 of season 1 of The Chosen. And at that point, it was like a show I had just recently heard of. I thought it was really interesting. So I did a video on some things, and it just, it took a while. It took about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but about a week after I said I quit is when that video just exploded. And it was a pretty clear sign of God saying, all right, come on back. And within a couple of weeks, it went from, 100 views to 100,000 views. And the channel went from 800 subscribers to 8,000 subscribers. And I could just see it. I was like, something's happening here. And I realized that what I did in that video was something I was really passionate about, which was diving into the context of the first century, what it was like to live at the time that Jesus lived and how that changes the way we read the Bible. And so I just shared that in a video, and I could see that other people were interested in it too. So it opened the door to be able to do even more of that.
So when things did start to blow up, were you like, dang it? Or were you like, woohoo, let's go?
I mean, it's definitely a mixture,
Yeah, okay.
I think after 2 years of doing it, to finally see it take off was so exciting.
Yeah.
But I also was pretty committed for the first few weeks there of like, I'm going to take this slow. I'm not just going to dive in. So I only put out a video every other week for a while there, just saying I still need to have this good boundary and structure. And then when I realized there was really something there that I was connecting with people, then I was like, okay, now that I know what I love is also what people want to learn, now I can really lean into that. And this is not going to be a channel about The Chosen, some temporary television show. It's going to be a channel that's really about helping people dive beyond, this is a phrase we use, kind of beyond the words of Scripture to really understand the context, the history, the culture in a way that changes the way that they read the Bible and helps them to see it with a whole new set of eyes. And was just really passionate about that and still am. Just love the opportunity to do that.
Now, you've changed channel vision over time. Is the actual channel different, like a different URL or entity, or did you just repurpose the quote unquote existing brand that you already had?
So I think my brand was always just Brandon Robbins. That was just the name of the channel. I was never creative enough to have anything other than that. And so we just kind of stuck with it because in the end, like, that's what you realize people are familiar with. They're familiar with your name and your personality and things like that. And so that was what I wanted to do, is to be able to just kind of reach people. And if they knew me, then I could do that. I mean, if I had to go back and do it again, I might have found a better name or a broader ministry title. I don't know that I personally love that it's all based on my name, but it's how people knew me. It's how people found the videos. And so we just leaned into that. So I didn't change anything about the old content. I just left it there. You can still go see pretty much all of that old content that I put out there. Some of it good, some of it really bad.
Right.
I just let it stay. And then I just kept putting out new stuff that I knew was what people were searching for and what I was passionate about.
Yeah. I'm guessing that a lot of people who are listening to us right now probably already have a presence on YouTube and may have started in much the same fashion that you did. Like, they wanted to play around with it a little bit, and looking back at things from a couple years ago, probably not particularly proud of their productions that they've put out. And maybe I'm speaking to myself more than I'm speaking to anybody else. But do you think that there would be like a repercussion from YouTube if you went and deleted that old stuff? I know on other platforms they do that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so I've listened to a lot of different YouTube teachers, and I'm in some YouTube coaching currently, just always trying to learn about it and how it works and things like that. And so, I mean, I would say that, if you went and kind of unlisted a bunch of old videos that had no connection, that weren't getting views, I don't really think that you would have too much negative consequence of that, but I think it's something you just have to really be careful with. The truth is that old catalog's not going to hurt you, right? Like, as far as YouTube is concerned, all it cares about is that people want to watch the content and they want to keep watching after that, right? They want to click on it and then they want to keep watching as long as possible. So if you're putting out that content, it really doesn't even matter what's back there. I mean, the truth is, for me, if I'm not looking back at my old content and saying, man, that was awful, then that means I'm not growing. I'm not getting better. And so I'm okay with that. Like, it still makes me cringe, and yet for some reason people watch it. So let them watch it, right?
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for that. And these days you're doing a video a week. Is that right?
Yeah, we try to do a video a week. I mean, on YouTube, I have other things that I do. I have a membership that people are part of. We're always creating videos for that. I'm still a full-time pastor, so
Right.
I'm creating sermons for, every week, and we have an online service where we produce that. But as far as YouTube goes, yeah, we try to stick to one a week.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk about that flow a little bit, especially in light of the fact that you are a full-time pastor in the local parish. A hurdle for many people when it comes to content creation is just figuring out what comes next, right? You can start off with, well, I've got 7 or 8 great ideas. That'll last you for a little while. Inevitably, it comes to the point where it's like, I'm supposed to put out a video next week. I have no idea what I'm going to say. So how do you manage to navigate through that kind of mental barrier?
So for a long time, I really did wrestle with that. Especially when I started out, like I knew I was going to cover all of The Chosen. So that gave me a whole bunch of content because they had already come out with 2 seasons at that point. And I started a series called Beyond the Words, where I went through every chapter of the Gospel of Mark. And so that was 16 weeks, 16 videos I could do there. But then after that, it was really like, okay, what's next? Do I just do a different book of the Bible? Do I, focus on something else? And since then, what I've really learned through just a lot of studying and listening is that you just have to know your viewer. And I think that's something I'm still trying to learn. But in the end, that's really what YouTube's about. YouTube is not here to exist for creators. It's here to exist for viewers. And so what they care about is, what does that viewer want to click on and what do they want to keep watching? And so knowing who your particular viewer is and then knowing what they're searching for, I think is really, really helpful. So one of the things we're always looking at is, what are people watching? Like, of what we've created, what seems to get the attention? And that tells us what people are interested in. Or we'll do some research and try to find out what other channels are they watching and what do they love about that content. And so recently, one of the things we've seen is that almost every video that's in our top 5 videos has to do with a specific disciple or character in the Bible, whether it's Mary, the mother of Jesus, or John the Baptist, or Mary Magdalene, or Matthew. Like, all of them seem to be really connecting with people right now. And so that's probably somewhere I'm going to lean in and say, well, there's a whole lot of other people to cover. Let's kind of dive into that and see what we can show people there. And in the end, it always has to be authentic. Like, I have to want to do it. It has to be something that interests me. I don't want to make a channel that's for other people because I'll run out of energy doing that really fast. But just also realizing that I'm not just making content for me. I'm really thinking about who my viewer is and having a connection with them and hearing what is it you're searching for and how can I be a part of that journey with you.
Okay. And do you find oftentimes that the content that you're creating for YouTube and the content that you're creating for the local parish, for example, Sunday sermon, do they overlap?
Sometimes they very intentionally overlap.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay.
You have to consolidate. And I mean, it's, especially having done it for about 3 years now, really consistently, it's not uncommon for me to build a sermon off of some research I did for a video 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Or vice versa. I'll take something I had done in a sermon and say, I can use this as a foundation for a video. So very often doing that. And because one of the things I also realize is not everybody in my church is watching my YouTube videos. So it's all brand new to them. And pretty much nobody who watches my YouTube videos, is watching my sermons at church. So it can easily cross over.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to touch base with you about that. If there was a sense of connection between the digital ministry and the in-person or, combined in-person hybrid digital ministry, have you seen people within the parish responding to your videos online or vice versa?
To an extent. I mean, so there's definitely people in our church who watch my videos, who know what's going on in YouTube and all of that. But I've also been, this is just me personally, very, very careful about letting that become too big. It matters a lot to me that my church knows that I'm their pastor and that they never think, oh, he's got this YouTube thing that he really, really cares about, and we are just like second rate. So I will intentionally not talk about it. Like when I had a book come out back in February, and I think I maybe mentioned it to him one time before it came out, and then I mentioned it the week before it came out, just because I felt like it was weird not to mention it. But that was it. Like, I didn't hype it, I didn't promote it. I really wanted it to be just let me be their pastor. So in that sense, not necessarily. I mean, I let them know about it. Anything I have that I can give them, if I create a Bible study, if I do anything like that, like I give it to our church for free. I try to make sure that they have all those resources. And then on the flip side, what we have seen is some people who've watched me on YouTube who will come to our church and say, hey, I found you on YouTube, or, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you were the guy I've been watching on YouTube, that sort of thing. But even that, like, I'm very careful because I try to protect, my family and my personal life. And so YouTube's a kind of a wild west out there, and I don't really necessarily want that coming in too much. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, I think the thing about YouTube is that it really is like an international sort of ministry. Like, I get to connect with people in the Philippines and Australia and Belgium and Germany. I mean, I'm just thinking of the people who, like, we see on our live streams. So I get to have that connection, but it's also really hard to bring it to the local church because YouTube's not thinking about it that way. It's just saying, who wants to watch this? And it's not going to just do that for Virginia Beach.
Do you find yourself in pastoral relationships with some of the people who you're meeting through YouTube?
Do you mean like in terms of the viewer?
Yeah. I mean, are you learning about their lives? Are you offering kind of pastoral advice? Are you praying with people?
So we've done that in a couple ways. One of the things that I always think we have to do if we're going to be on a platform like YouTube is find a way to bridge that gap. My goal is not to create consumers, it's to create disciples. And I think that has to have relationship. So we were wrestling with that probably for about the first year or so of saying, well, what would that even look like? How would we do that? And we ended up creating a free community that people can join, that they can be a part of, and where in that community there are prayer requests, like a place to put your prayer requests. There's places to ask questions. Every now and then I'll throw in a teaching or something like that. But it's just a place for people to connect. And so that is one place where, I'll answer prayer requests or just say, hey, I'm praying for you, or I'll answer questions. But then we also kind of pulled it a little bit closer, and we've got a membership that people are part of where they get consistent teaching every month. They get reading plans and Bible studies and stuff like that. And that's like a community I'll invest in a bit more. But I would say that I'm not their pastor. So I may have a bit of a pastoral relationship, but it's always my goal that they're connected to the local church. So we can take the things that I'm teaching on YouTube, and we can take this really awesome opportunity we have to be able to connect online, but that's not the goal. Like, the goal isn't to be in some online forum. I think there's real limitations to that. So it's always like, how do we push you back to the local church? How do we send you out to live out the Great Commission? There's, of course, those people who are homebound, and this is their only sense of connection. And it's beautiful that we can be there in that instance. But for the most part, it's like, let's go out into the world. Let's go connect with people in real life and take what we're learning here and spread it.
All right. Do you feel like the future, this is where we're going to start to get Brandon in some trouble. Do you feel like the future of ministry is heading into an age where the ability for a pastor to be an online content creator is necessary?
I don't know. I don't know that I would say it's necessary. I would say there's a ton of opportunity.
Okay.
YouTube is one of those places where I don't even know what it would take for it to be saturated. Because even when I create videos, and I've had a video that's reached over 1 million people, I mean, that is a fraction of what's on YouTube. The billions of people who are watching every single day. So, like, I've barely even scratched the surface. So there's plenty of room for other people out there to be reaching people. So I think it's a great opportunity. I don't know that I would ever say it's a necessity for that very reason of there's always a limitation. So you can spread the good news there, but you got to find a way to make people connect. Otherwise, we're really missing the point of the church. I mean, the church is the body. It's the believers who come together. You can do that in a forum, but like leading an online community, I can tell you that there's always a limit to that, where there's a difference between praying for somebody online or saying, I'll pray for you, and actually holding hands with somebody and praying. There's a difference between sitting in a room with other people and looking in each other's eyes as you discuss scripture or you share your concerns versus sitting on a Zoom call even. And so I think it's a great opportunity, but but it will always come back to the local church. So I think for churches, what you do is you say, okay, well, how can this be evangelism for us? Or what can we give? How can we resource people? What can we do to serve, and who do we want to reach? And even if they never come to our local church, like, this is just part of who we are and what our ministry is.
Well, Brandon, as you were getting started in producing your YouTube videos, was it just you on your own? Were you shooting from an iPhone, or how did that work?
It was. I had a DSLR camera that I'd gotten, and I guess I must have been interested in video. It's hard to remember now, but I had this camera when I started out at the church, and I think I had done a little bit of video at the previous church. So it was just kind of sitting there, and I decided, I'd use that. But man, I knew nothing. I didn't know anything about sound. I didn't know anything about lighting, any of those things. So I was just kind of winging it and, trying my best with what little things I had. I would edit it. I think I may have had iMovie or maybe a version of Final Cut. And all I was really using skill-wise was what I learned in one class in college. So, it was totally on my own, really, for probably the first year. Probably the first 2 to 3 years. So even after it took off, it was a good 8 months to a year before I finally brought somebody on consistently, and he would just kind of do some of the editing of the videos. But I was still filming it. I was still doing all of that stuff too.
I want to learn all about the aspects of some of the things that you've learned along the way, because in your channel growth, you've obviously learned some things about, SEO and, titling and everything like that. But just in the production end of it, where did you go to start to learn some of that stuff besides the one class in college?
Yeah.
That probably had you learning equipment that has been obsolete for 20 years.
I was on a Mac, but it was those old iMacs that the whole thing was on a, looked like a little spaceship sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. So, a lot of it was just asking around people I met. So there's this really wonderful guy, he's on our staff now, named Dave Daniels, and he came actually to the church first. He was recording our churches and editing our churches' worship services about halfway through COVID, when I just got exhausted and I couldn't do it anymore. He came in and he started doing that for us. And eventually he started doing some stuff for me. And so he's really the one who was like, all right, this is what you need lighting wise. This is what you need sound wise. We can upgrade those sorts of things. But then in terms of just how to do YouTube, which I think is its own whole bucket of knowledge, two really, really influential resources. So one is Sean Cannell and Think Media, which just a really great resource for, I would especially say, YouTubers who are starting out. People who just want to know those basics, want to get to their first 1,000 subscribers, want to get monetized, all those things. Think Media and Sean Cannell are the place to go for that. And I remember reading his book and just being kind of blown away by some of the things that at that point, I'd never heard anybody say this stuff before. So I think that's a great place to start. And then the other one is actually a really interesting connection I got through The Chosen. So I, was doing these videos, and I eventually got invited to some Chosen events and things like that, and met a really good friend of mine named Brandon Snipe, who was also doing videos about The Chosen. And he invited me on a live stream. And while I was on it, Dallas Jenkins, the creator of The Chosen, came on. And then this guy named Daryl Eves came on. And I had no idea who Daryl was, but all I knew is he was the executive producer of the show and basically helped get it off the ground. But what I came to learn is he's just a brilliant YouTube basically mentor. He mentors Mr. Beast. He knows YouTube better than anybody probably in the world, other than the people at Google, and maybe even better than them. Just understands it at the most fundamental level. And so he is somebody who I've just been trying to learn from. He wrote a book called The YouTube Formula, but he also has coaching and things like that. And that's, so just every place I can go to just learn that little bit. And some of it makes me realize that for the first couple of years, we got really lucky, where I would do a video and it would do great. And then I'd do another video and it'd do well. And I had no idea why.
Okay.
I thought I did then, and I look back now and I'm like, man, just happened to do it. And then another video would come out and I would bomb. And it's just because I didn't know. I was just kind of guessing. And so, so being with people like that gives you a better idea of what to do.
Well, as you're looking back now from the perfect apex of 2020 vision in the hindsight, are you able to pinpoint what were some of the keys of success of those early viral videos?
Well, so what I can pinpoint is those moments where something was happening and I could have taken advantage of it and I didn't know what was happening.
Okay.
So there was like an Easter where it was just every video was really just blowing up. And these videos that had kind of been dormant for a while, all of a sudden they shot to the top. And so what I would do now, if I were in that situation, is I would go and be like, what is the thread here? What do all these videos have in common? Because one of the things I've learned about YouTube is where that happens is in your suggested videos. Those things that just show up on the side when you're watching a video. If you can really start to gain traction there, that's when you go from a couple 100,000 to a couple million. I mean, that's the place. And so, if I could go back in time, I would say, what was it about all those videos in my top 5 or my top 10 at that moment? And how do I just keep leaning into that sort of content, whatever it was, create new buckets out of that, of just, kind of themes of videos that fit that and just really build on that success. So that was where I would say, at the time I thought, oh, it's Easter. Easter's making all of these things do really well. But in hindsight, it's like, no, there's something else. And if you can nail that down, then you really know how to just continue to grow your channel.
For the pastor who is maybe looking to cultivate the same kind of presence, either as a mode of outreach or they're thinking about figuring out another way to kind of supplement pastoral income, what might be some early advice that you can offer in terms of building a channel?
So I actually had a friend come to me with this question recently. And the thing I loved about our conversation was he knew exactly who he wanted to reach. And I think that is the key I would tell anybody. So he came to me and he said, what I want to do is I want to reach those people who just don't feel like they have a place in church. And one of the things I did recently is I found all these guys who just wouldn't come to my church. So I did a Bible study in my home. And when I did that, it started out with 3 people, then it turned into 15 people. Now it's 30 people in my house doing this Bible study. And he knew exactly, if he had to create an avatar, he knew exactly who that person was. He's this age, he likes these things, this is his profile. And I told him when we talked, I'm like, that is so critical for you. Because if you know that, now you know exactly what kind of content you need to create. And YouTube will find those people. And that's the thing to understand about YouTube. It's not trying to say, I need to take Brandon's videos and put Brandon's videos in front of as many people as possible. It's saying, who is the viewer and do they want to watch Brandon's videos? And if they want to watch it, then I'll give it to them. And so it's when you know that person inside and out, when you can say this is my audience and this is who I'm trying to reach, you really have a much better chance of being able to reach that audience and to really have that impact. So I would say for churches, first thing, figure out who you want to reach, really just nail that down. If you try to reach everybody, you'll reach nobody, kind of that old adage. But if you know specifically your niche, you'll do really well. And then I would also say, this is something I had to learn the hard way, you have to be in it for the long haul. I mean, it took me 2 years before one video really popped. And are you willing to be in it for 2 years before that happens? Because the truth is you may just be one video away from that moment when it really connects with somebody and kind of what God has put you here to do and who God's put you here to serve. And so if you can figure out the serve part on the front end, that'll be a lot easier. But in the end, if your heart is really to serve people online, then just be willing to stick with it, even if it feels like nothing's happening, because it'll eventually come around.
Brandon, it occurs to me that that's sound advice, not just for the YouTube ministry, but probably church ministry in general, right? I mean, anytime you're starting up a new ministry, probably want to have it clear in mind of who it is that you're trying to reach and engage with.
and I think I see so many parallels there, because one of the biggest complaints somebody on YouTube who's creating videos would have is, well, I created this amazing video. Why does YouTube not give it to anybody? And that's the wrong question.
Yeah.
Right. The question is, who am I trying to reach and how do I make a great video for them? And I think as churches, we do the same thing, right? We're we put on this amazing event. Why didn't anybody show up to our event? when the real
Right,
question
yeah.
should be, who's in our community? What do they need? And how do we serve them best? It's just totally different way of thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, and then that lends into the credence that sometimes there are channels that have horrible production quality, right? But they take off because they're still making meaningful content for the particular people who they're trying to engage with. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I look at my early content, like it doesn't have the lighting, it doesn't have the sound, it doesn't have any of those things, but some of it still reaches people. And I just think that's what it's about. It's about the message in the end.
well, your channel's grown to the point of monetization, and that has allowed you to enlist some other people to help you with that process. It's kind of a chicken in the egg thing. What came first, the monetization and then the additional staffing, or were you more proactive and were able to bring in some additional staffing that helped then fuel the growth towards?
It was monetization first.
Yeah, okay.
And monetization, early on. So, I mean, when my YouTube channel finally kind of took off, it was monetized pretty quickly thereafter, because I think you have to have 4,000 watch hours and 1,000 subscribers or something like that. And so it monetized. But I mean, you're not getting rich off of that sort of thing. Like, I remember the first day was like $30. I'm like, this is 10 times more than I ever thought I'd ever get. Like,
Truth, yeah.
So, and it wasn't huge, and I mean, it's still not huge, but it was, sort of the thing where it was just like, it was nice to have a little bit extra. And so we kind of, really didn't know what to do that. We saved a lot of it, saying, this is some extra blessing God's given us. We're going to use this for ministry in the future. And so I really just kept doing my own thing for probably a good 6 months to a year. And then that was when we finally brought on Dave to do that editing for me. And it was part-time. It was like per job. He was giving us an amazing rate. And, so we would pay him with what we were kind of earning out of YouTube. And then, as things grew, he finally came on full-time last year. And also my wife now works for the ministry. But that's it. I mean, we're a small shop. So we're pretty bare bones. I'm sure that there's times where we probably do need to hire more people, but that's just kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, we're going to start cranking out 2 videos a week, Brandon. You can't wait, right?
My goal is actually to go in the opposite direction, to do videos that do so well. It's like 1 a month. That's my goal. Just to give some breathing room, but
For sure. Yeah, well, are you doing all that? Because as I've watched the videos, some of them are pretty research intensive. Is that stuff that you've just collected over the years, or are you having to spend a considerable amount of time each week in content generation, doing things like research and reshoots?
Yeah. So, I mean, some of it is stuff that I've learned over the years. I mean, I think I probably studied these things for 10 years before I really started putting out content regularly. So there was thankfully a nice well of information that I had to draw upon. But it was also, I'm very much, especially with how kind of busy things are these days, with having the ministry online and writing a book and having a church and putting out weekly content. Like, I've had to really get better about my schedule. So one of the things that I do is routinely go away, and I will take about 3 or 4 days, and I will just pump out a ton of content. So I did this last week. I mean, I think I probably created 10 to 12 videos while I was away last week, and just, try to get ahead. And I found that I work much better when I've got no distraction. Like, I can just focus on it from wake up till go to sleep, just give it all my attention, do my research. And so that's kind of my pattern, but that's really evolved and developed over time. For the early days, it was just, I would sit down and probably spend a day researching and, getting everything ready for a video.
You've mentioned now that you've entered a phase where you're doing a little bit of coaching. What's something that you're offering people through the coaching that you wish somebody had offered you?
Well, I mean, what I offer, I guess, that I wish I could have learned years, even earlier than I did, was just all of this stuff about what it was like to live in the world of Jesus. So that's really what our membership is all about. Of, how do I help you to dive into that world, to understand all the things that I overlooked in the Bible, like geography. I mean, for me, it was like any name of a town was just a name of a town. I had no clue where it was. I had no clue why it was significant. And it really wasn't even until I went to Israel that it just like clicked. Why does Caesarea Philippi matter so much? Well, when you're standing in front of a place there that's literally called the gates of hell, all of a sudden that whole passage where Jesus says, I'm going to build my church and the gates of hell won't overcome it makes whole different sense in that moment. So, being able to pass those things down that people pass down to me, or even something as simple. I remember this was one of the first revelations that happened for me. I was reading a book called Sitting at the Feet of Rabbi Jesus by Lois de Verberg and Ann Spangler. And they talked about how Pentecost was actually the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. And that was the reason that there were people there, so many people in the temple, is because it was one of the 3 Jewish holy days where you were required to travel to Jerusalem, which also explains why you had people speaking all of these different languages in that moment. And then the whole thing flips on its head and you understand, okay, that's what it means when it says everybody was speaking their own language, but they could all understand each other. It's because they've all traveled from around the world to be in this place for Shavuot, and that's when the Holy Spirit comes. And then you understand the significance of why on that day the Holy Spirit came, and how that takes that whole story even deeper. Like, those are the things that took a Bible that I had read, for 30 years and made it like it was brand new. And that's the gift that I try to share with other people, that you don't even have to be a biblical scholar to know and understand these things and pass them on. It's just learning how to read the Bible a little bit differently and learning where to look to see some of these things.
You see that community start to come through a little bit in some of the comments. I'm going to give a little space around this because I might cut this question as well, Brandon, but I'm just thinking about in navigating comments. Your comment section is very positive. Is there a cultivation process there?
No, I think that is that's maybe a little bit different than what I see sometimes. I feel like
for sure.
YouTube just shows me all the negative stuff. I think comments are a great indicator of what people are getting out of your videos, and something that's really helpful to look at just to understand who your viewer is and what they're doing. And even who your viewer isn't, because that's something I learn a lot of, just somebody having issue here or there. So comments are one of those things that I've learned to really just look for the best in them. And we don't do a ton to really cultivate that, unfortunately, just because sometimes it gets overwhelming. It's too many comments on too many videos to be able to do much with it. And we really try to focus on our community. But it is a place that I go. And it took me a while, I will tell you, to learn to really see it for what positive things it has to offer. So I would go in there and I'd read every comment and I try to respond to everything. And you get into those negatives. And even though I can take some criticism, it just weighs on you. And you walk away feeling drained and awful. And I was like, what's the point of that? I'm not going to argue some random person into agreeing with me. So in the end, I just take it for what blessings it has to offer, of being able to maybe sometimes hear stories of life change that I get to think about and celebrate, or just even be able to connect with somebody who has a question or just wants to, just say, hey, this was amazing to me. And I get to be like, yeah, it was amazing to me too. I'm so glad that it blessed you, that sort of thing.
But you're not using the comment section to change minds.
No, I don't.
Make further arguments about theology, that kind of thing.
I don't really feel like arguing about theology online is ever a productive pursuit. And there are some people
I tend to agree too. But
yeah. But I think that I've seen way too many people find courage behind the veil of the internet, that if we were to have a face-to-face conversation, it would have an entirely different tone and it would just have an entirely different outcome. And so for me, it's just not a place to do that. I mean, there are times I think where if somebody just totally misinterpreted me, I would say, hey, this is what I intended, hoping oh, now that you understand, maybe that will help you to see that a little bit differently. But beyond that, I just don't even go into that. There's so much more good, positive kingdom building stuff that I could spend my time on that's just not it.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, Brandon, if folks want to learn a little bit more, where do you recommend they start? With the YouTube channel or with your website?
Yeah, definitely start off with YouTube. That'll be where you kind of get a look at everything we're doing. So that's just youtube.com/@Brandon Robbins Ministry, I think is what that's called. And then BrandonRobbinsMinistry.com is our website. So you can just go to that, and that'll link you to some YouTube stuff as well as free resources we give away, the book, our membership, different things like that.
Well, fantastic. Brandon, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us and your hope as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on.
Hey, thanks for taking this journey with us on MyCom. Want to enrich your congregation's understanding of the sacraments? The new Belong series from Discipleship Ministries is your guide with insightful resources on baptism, Holy Communion, and membership vows. It's designed to bring faith to life in deeper, more personal ways. Whether you're leading a small group or seeking to inspire your entire church, the Belong series helps you turn learning into living. Discover the full suite of resources today at umcdiscipleship.org. For more things MyCom and more tips and resources for your ministry, check out resourceumc.org as well. MyCom is a production of United Methodist Communications, and it comes out monthly. Thank you to Renee McNeil and Patty Delabovi for production and marketing support. My name is Ryan Dunn. I'll chat at you soon. Peace.